I recently completed writing an entire book using nothing but AI and a little bit of my own editing, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it went, as well as my 5 biggest takeaways from that experience. Let's go. So yes, I completed a book. It's called Heirs of Dracula. It's not out yet, but I do have a cover that I commissioned, and yes, this is a commissioned artwork. This is not AI art that you can see right here. And this was a gothic fantasy that takes place in my world. I was very excited to write it, and it actually was pretty good. It turned out really good. I'm very pleased with it. And because I'm using a lot of the techniques that I talk about here on this channel, I didn't actually have to edit it as much as I thought it would. But of course, because this is AI, we have to edit it quite a bit. And that actually brings me to my first big takeaway from this entire experience, which you can see the entire thing, by the way. I've got a live stream playlist where you can watch the entire process. I put pretty much everything in the live stream is all of the time that I put into it. I put maybe 2 or 3 hours outside of the live streams into this novel, so not a whole lot. Pretty much everything is there. So if you want to see the entire process, go check out that live stream. I'll have a link below. But the first big takeaway that I have from this entire experience was that it actually didn't save me a whole lot of time, if I'm being completely honest. A lot of people, I think, have gotten into the AI craze thinking like, oh, this is going to save me so much time. I'll be able to put out a book a week. I'll be able to do all these things. And AI is a helpful tool. But I found that when I actually timed myself on how long it took me to get a completed chapter, it took me almost the same amount of time that it would have taken me to write it out myself in the first place. So you may be asking, like, why even use AI at all? Well, if you follow this channel for a long time, you'll know my story that I got severely burnt out a number of years ago and have struggled writing ever since. And it was AI that sort of got me out of that and got me writing again. I believe the biggest help that AI can give you is not saving you time. It is saving you the mental effort. Okay? This is a big deal. This is, I've had some people come to the channel and just say, well, just do the work. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be all these like hard things. You're supposed to sweat and toil and, sweat blood and all of these things. And I'm just like, why? Like, why does it have to be hard for us? Honestly, why can't it be an easier process? So many people burn out. So many groups of people are not even capable of starting to write a book because of how difficult it is. The barrier to entry is very, very thick. And honestly, I have found so many people that have come to me on my channel have said, hey, I've struggled with ADHD or depression or autism or any host of things, and they are finally able to write their book because of AI. AI is a mind saver. It is not a time saver. So that was my first big takeaway. The second one was Claude 2.0 seems to be the best model for writing fiction at this time. But it is not perfect, and I think there is a better way. If you follow my live streams, you'll see I was creating all of the chapters in one go. I would write the story beats myself, then I would give them to Claude 2.0, and then I would let Claude 2.0 write the entire chapter out at once, and then I would edit that chapter. And while that worked, it was often difficult just to get the chapter to work right? And then halfway through, Claude 2.1 came out, which everyone was like, oh, maybe this will be even better. It turned out to be worse. It was actually a real nightmare that caused me to panic a little bit as I was writing this thing. And I was in the middle of this story, and suddenly Claude 2.1 was not working for me. And so I was able to find ways to go back to Claude 2.0 and continue to use that. And so I think that there is actually a better way to write this, which is why the next book that I write will probably be in a tool like Novel Crafter, which does things one section at a time. So not a whole chapter at once, but one section at a time. And I think actually the best way to go, and I'm going to test this out myself, is to write the first, 500 words of the chapter myself, and then allow AI to pick up where I left off. And by doing so, it should match my style a lot more seamlessly and have a much better idea of what I mean when I say, use show, don't tell, and get deep into point of view, have a lot of dialogue, because so many times it just got those wrong and I had to regenerate and regenerate and regenerate until it finally got it right. And I think if I give it a little bit of finished text to start with, it can just pick up from where it left off and it will do a much better job from that point on. So I'm going to be trying that, and I think a tool like Novel Crafter will probably be a better tool to work. This isn't sponsored by Novel Crafter or anything. There is an affiliate link below if you're interested, but that is my plan for the next book going forward. My third biggest takeaway is that AI does a really good job at filling in for your weaknesses while allowing you to focus on your strengths. And what I mean by this is that sometimes, very often, I would find in the editing phase, I would find myself making the prose better. I was just naturally like, oh, this part is not good, I can make it better. But there were other times when I realized this is so much better than I would have done on my own. And what it did is allowed me to sort of bring in the troughs, right? Bring in the things that I was weakest at, so that suddenly my baseline was higher. But still allowed me to really do the things that I do well in the editing phase. Not to mention the outlining phase when I was creating the story for the AI to write in the first place. For example, there were scenes in my book with the character of Sherlock Holmes, which of course all of us know who Sherlock Holmes is. And I went in a little nervous about writing Sherlock Holmes because he is such a beloved character, and he has such a distinctive voice that I did not know if I was going to be able to duplicate. And there were scenes where the AI was writing Sherlock's dialogue where I was just like, this is phenomenal. This is amazing dialogue. And I loved it and had very little to improve upon it. And then there were other scenes where, other characters were talking a little bit too colorfully or too dramatically. And I had to tone that down a little bit to make it seem a little bit more natural. But you can see I would not have written Sherlock as well as the AI. I know that for a fact. I would not have done as good of a job as the AI did for certain scenes with Sherlock's dialogue. And yet there are also some scenes that the AI could not possibly have written it as good as I was able to write it or edit it. And so I find AI to be a really good help in that regard of really helping where you have weaknesses while still allowing you to focus on your strengths. My fourth biggest takeaway is that actually the story ended up being shorter than I expected. I was using the 24 chapter novel outline, and I was expecting it to be around 75,000 words, so about 3,000 words per chapter. And it ended up being just over 50,000 words, which was a little short in my expectation. I'm usually not that far off on my expectations of a word count, but this one ended up being shorter, and I'm still working through that. I'm still saying, like, is it too rushed? Do I need to add a few scenes to flesh it out a little bit more? And that's what I'm working with right now as I'm going through my second editing pass, is how well does this read all the way through overall? Ultimately, I think because this is a story that had primarily one viewpoint character, that it's okay if it's a little shorter. Usually it's when you add more viewpoint characters that your novel gets longer. I think it's certainly not uncommon for a single viewpoint character to have a book that is 50 to 70,000 words and no longer. But it was interesting to me that it ended up being shorter than I expected, and I may find that I need to flesh it out even more than I thought. And the number 5 and final takeaway that I wanted to talk to you about today is this fact that, the night that I finished the book, it was on the live stream, you can go watch it. I was just like, great, I finished the book. It felt good. Like, yeah, I finished a book. And then I turned off the live stream, went and talked to my wife. We were getting ready for bed, and suddenly it hit me. I just finished a book, and I got emotional because it has been a long time since I had finished a full-length novel, meaning over 40,000 words. It had been a very long time. I told you earlier about the burnout that I went through. I'm still recovering from that. I still have trouble. And so to say that I finished a novel for the first time in years now was a really big deal. It was a really big deal. And AI did that for me. There was still a lot of work on my part. Like I said, this did not save me that much time. but it did save me the headache. It did save me that blank page syndrome that we all have, where we are frightened of the blank page. It did save me from that feeling of dread of like, oh, I've got to like go into this place of you know, when you're burnt out, it hurts. There's almost a physical reaction to going and starting to write from that blank page, and it hurts. And I did not have that at any point during the writing of this novel. And so it's not so much of a takeaway as it is just a celebration of, hey, I finished a book, and I was very happy with it. The finished book will be very much my own story, very much my own words, because I edit it quite heavily. And even though there are sections like Sherlock's dialogue where I will likely leave it a lot of the way it is, a lot of it is still mine. And I only leave the stuff that I know that either I would write it the exact same way, or it wrote it better than I would write it. So those are my thoughts after having finished this book using AI. And it'll probably be a little while before you're able to buy this book, but it will be available commercially to buy at any regular place, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, where you can buy ebooks. And that has been my thoughts. I'll see you in the next video.